Eliezer brought back Rebekah for Isaac, and they got married. Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, daughter of Besul the Aramean from Padan Aram, sister of the Aramean, his wife himself. I'm not going to comment on all of that. And they had no children. So Isaac entreated Hashem opposite his wife. It could be opposite. It could be concerning. Nochach. Question is whether she was davening also. Because she was barren. Hashem allowed himself to be entreated by him, and his wife Rebekah conceived. And as you will see, this took 20 years. Because when they give birth, when she gives birth, he's 60. Okay, now comes something very important, a little bit tricky and subtle, and it'll be very important for later on. The children agitated within her. All right. That already tells you that she's pregnant with twins. Twins, right? And she said, if so, now the strict translation of the Hebrew was even more drastic than the English. Why do I exist? Lama ze anochi. Why do I exist at all? She's in despair. She's in utter despair. She went to inquire of Hashem. Okay, query for you guys. Test, quiz time. Does she know that she's pregnant with twins?
No, I meant she would. Well, yeah, I meant she would.
Why? Why should she know? Today, ultrasounds often reveal shocking surprises. There's more than one in there, right? There's no way for the mother to know. So when it says the children agitated within her and she was in distress, it doesn't mean she's in distress because two twins are fighting inside. That's not why she's in distress. She doesn't know that it's two twins fighting inside. And the question is, what does she know? Or what does she think? I'll come back to that. That's the first question that arises. Don't confuse what the text tells us with what she knows. The text is telling us, but she doesn't know that. And she's in utter despair. Now she goes to inquire of Hashem. Gee, how come she's taking a trip? Why doesn't she ask her husband? He's not just Philip from down the street. He's the son of Abraham. He's a great man, so on and so on, right? And he certainly will be a prophet. He went through the Akedah, right, the pseudo-sacrifice. Somehow she couldn't get any satisfaction at home. He couldn't help her. I'm assuming she did ask. And because he couldn't help her, so she went elsewhere.
Where did she go?
So that's a good question. And I'll tell you the next words. It says, Hashem said to her. Now, here you can instruct your professors of biblical Hebrew. There is a rabbinical tradition that she went to Shem, who was still alive, and he told her. The English reader will say, it says he said to her, don't push it off on somebody else. But in Hebrew, the lamed can mean to say about, not to say to. When the Jews make a break for it from Egypt, and they don't come back, it says, Vayomer Paro livnei Yisrael, nuvichim heim b'midbar. Vuchim heim b'midbar. Or ba'aretz. It says, Vayomer Paro livnei Yisrael. They're 3 days gone. They're talking to them. They aren't there. It means Paro said about the Jewish people. The lamed can mean about. It doesn't have to mean to. And the oral tradition says, I'm not sure that there aren't two opinions here, but one tradition, I think Rashi brings it, is that it wasn't direct prophecy to her. She got it from Shem, who was a prophet, obviously. He was one of Noah's 3 children. God spoke to them. But what you end up with is that this message, which we're going to study now in 23, this message is coming to her and not to him. And then I'll extend that in a moment. But what does Hashem say about her? 2 nations are in your womb. 2 regimes, that means like nations with their own authority, from your inside shall be separated. The might shall pass from one regime to the other. In other words, there'll be competition, and when one's up, the other one will be down. And the elder shall serve the younger. This one you can write in your diary. She knows from before they're born, the older one has to serve the younger one. So much later, when there's a whole interaction as to who should get what, and what kind of blessings, and so forth and so on, she has this information and he does not. Now, the alert, alive reader will ask, okay, it came to her. It came to her. But why shouldn't she tell him? She asked him, he didn't have an answer. Now it came to her. So even on the surface, if she asked him and didn't get it from him, she went to shame and got it from shame, she can conclude because Baruch Hu doesn't want him to have it. Because Baruch Hu wanted him to have it, he would have given it to him and he would have given it to me. There's also a general rule that if God tells something to one prophet, that prophet doesn't tell it to another prophet, on the grounds that the other one is already a prophet, because Baruch Hu wanted them to know, he tell them direct. Either way, what you get in the end here is that she knows and he doesn't, and that's going to be very important. Now let's come back to the words on the page. So, she didn't know she had twins. She felt some kind of agitation within her. This agitation was so devastating, she said, I don't know why I exist. My whole life is worthless because of this agitation. And then she gets the message, oh, they're twins. And they're going to struggle with one another. The elder shall serve the younger. And now she's happy. Oh, okay, fine. I can live with that. No problem. No evidence whatsoever of continued despair or continued inquiry or anything. What was the problem for which this was the solution? Why is she happy now? I don't know of anywhere, so certainly nothing in the verses indicates this. I heard a wonderful explanation from Amram Taub, with whom we were privileged to have a lot of contact when we were in Baltimore. As I have told to some of you, when you have a question which is answered by an explanation, that always leaves open the possibility that there are other explanations. If the question is answered by a deduction, then that nails it as the right answer. But that's an explanation. There could be other explanations as well. But he explains it as follows. Where there's a midrash which says that when she went past a place of Torah study, she felt pressure within her as if wanting to come out. When she went past a place of idol worship, she felt pressure within her as if wanting to come out. So that's the experience that she has, which creates her despair. Now she learns that it's twins, and each one wants to go in a different way. And now she's happy. So the problem was, said Rabbi Taub, that she thought it was one. And it's much worse if it's one than if it's two. Why is it much worse if it's one than if it's two? So he quoted a famous incident in Tanakh when Elijah the prophet challenged the prophets of Baal to a contest. This happened in the Carmel Mountains near Haifa. He said, you guys believe in this nonsense, and I represent the creator of the universe. Let's see who's right. We'll make a contest. We'll each build an altar. We'll each put an animal on the altar with wood. We won't put any fire. And we'll ask the one we believe in to send fire from heaven. And we'll see who gets an answer. So they do that. They build an altar, they put wood on top, and they put the animal on top. And then he says, you're the many, and I'm only one. You start. Call out to your idol and the gods that you believe in, and have them send fire from heaven. They do so the whole day, and nothing happens. So then he says, I'm building my altar. He builds the altar, puts wood on top, and he puts the animal on top. And then he says to the people, bring water. And they drench the entire altar with water. And then there are 3 rivulets around that. They're also drenched with water. The whole thing is soaking in water. And then he says, Hashem, please answer me and send fire from heaven. And fire comes down from heaven and it burns up the animal and the wood and evaporates the water and scorches the rocks. And the people are very, very impressed. And they say the famous words which we have in our prayers in various places. Hashem hu Elohim. Hashem is God. Hashem is God. Now, In the middle of this process, Elijah says to the people, how long are you going to straddle the fence? Which means jumping from one side to the other. How long are you going to straddle the fence? If you believe in Hashem, then dedicate yourselves 100% to Hashem. And if you believe in Baal, dedicate yourselves 100% to Baal. Now, the naive reader thinks, is that a kosher Jewish hashkafa? A kosher Jewish philosophy? I understand that if you dedicate yourself to God, you should be 100% dedicated to God. But if you're going to pledge allegiance to Baal, you should pledge allegiance 100% to Baal? What's the point of that? The point of that is very simple. Elijah is saying to them, what kind of people are you? Are you people of principle? When you make a choice, you dedicate yourself to it without reservation, you accept it, you pledge allegiance to it? Or are you straddling the fence, sometimes this and sometimes that? When in Rome, do Rome. When in Athens, do Athens. When in New York, do New York. When Los Angeles, do Los Angeles. And you have no principles of your own. The difference is this. If you are people of principle, then you believe in Hashem, dedicate yourself to 100%, Him 100%. You believe in Baal, dedicate yourself to Baal 100% because in 2 hours you're going to see that Baal is false. I'm going to prove it to you. And then you'll be dedicated to Hashem 100%. So I don't mind what your initial orientation is, because I'm going to prove the truth. But if you're people without a backbone, there are two types of people, vertebrates and jellyfish. If you're a jellyfish, if you have no backbone, if you can cram yourself into any shaped container because you have no shape of your own, what difference will it make if I prove it today? Tomorrow also you'll shift back and forth between the two positions. And that's exactly what happened. Elijah's demonstration did not end the Baal worship. Baal worship went on for centuries. So this is the difference between a dedicated person versus what I call a jellyfish. Now back to Rebecca. She doesn't know she has twins. She goes past the place of Torah study, she has pressure to come out. She goes past the place of idol worship, she has pressure to come out. She thinks it's one. She thinks she's giving birth to a jellyfish. That's why she's in despair, because it'll never amount to anything. Shem says to her, that's not the situation. The situation is twins. And one is naturally oriented this way, and one is naturally oriented that way. And that satisfies her, because she knows that even the one who's naturally oriented in a wrong direction, it can be turned around. And if it'll be turned around, then he'll be 100% dedicated to the right direction. That's the message of comfort in what she hears from Hashem. Just one second. And I want to add to this something which many people misunderstand. Esau was not created to be evil. Esau was not created to be evil. There was no predestination. He could have done better. Indeed, there are even sources that describe what would have happened. There would have been 4 patriarchs and not 3, like there were 4 matriarchs, right? And he would have been a full-fledged Jew, and his children would have been part of the Jewish people. So he wasn't pre-programmed to fail. Many sources talk about that. In fact, there was a division of labor set up. Jacob was supposed to bring holiness and purity into the world, and Esau was supposed to chase impurity and evil out of the world. This was a division of labor. That's why he was created with an affinity to the evil in the world. The affinity because that's his workplace. That's his sphere of creativity, his sphere of responsibility. Of course, each side has its dangers. Each side has its challenges. It's not a soft thing to do, to bring holiness and purity into the world. The Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid of Mizrich, on their deathbeds, the last things they said was, they quoted a verse which says, don't cause me to fail with pride. Because they brought so much holiness and goodness and purity into the world, the last gasp of the Satan would be, aren't you great? Look what you accomplished. You really did all that good. And that would destroy the whole thing. It would destroy the whole thing. So it's not a simple thing to bring holiness and purity into the world. It has its temptations and failures also. But that was supposed to be the division of labor. Esau failed at his job, the result of which was we had to take over his job. And therefore the Medrash says that Jacob gets his place in the world to come and Esau's also, meaning he had a place in the world to come reserved for him. And he could have had it. Jacob gets both, and Esau gets Jacob's place in Gehenna, a place in Gehenna if he would fail, and his own as well. So Esau ends up getting double Gehenna, and Jacob ends up getting double Gan Eden, double share of the world to come. Why? Because Jacob rose to and succeeded at his challenge, and Esau failed at his challenge, but he was not pre-programmed to evil. That's why there's a comfort in this to Rebekah, because she's told they have their initial orientations, but both could be good, both could be successful. To me, that's a wonderful explanation of the story. As I said, it's only an explanation. There could be other explanations as well, but it certainly does explain the story. When the term to bear grew full, to behold, there were twins in her womb. The first one emerged red, entirely like a hairy mantle, so they named him Esau. Now, it's not exactly obvious what the word Esau has to do with being red and covered with hair. The word Esau in Hebrew is related to action. The ayin, sin, is the two main letters of the verb to do, asot, asiyah. And as we'll see, he's going to be characterized in terms of his hands, in terms of action. And these characteristics of being red and hairy are associated in other biblical texts, like with King David and others, with people of action, people whose focus is more performing, changing the world, impacting the world in a demonstrative way, rather than, let's say, thinking and speaking and teaching and setting an example, which is a different type of accomplishment. After that, his brother emerged with his hand grasping onto the heel of Esau. They called his name Yaakov. Yaakov is from the word akev, which means heel. Now, let me just try this out on you. 26 starts, after that his brother emerged with his hand grasping onto the heel of Esau. Any words there that you think you could erase with no loss? How about after that? So the term came to behold. The first one emerged, it says in 25, the first one emerged, and then suppose the next one said, and his brother emerged, or and another one emerged. And of course, it would mean he's second because the other one was described as first. What does it say after that? So whenever you have words like that, it's telling you a reason. It's not just sequence. It's telling you a reason. Jacob is coming after him. And then he's holding on to his heel. How dramatic. Right? So in other words, Jacob is somehow sort of trailing along behind and holding on. And holding on to his heel, in particular, that's the lowest part of the body. Right? Now, as we will see, Yetz Hashem, over and over again, the first section of Jacob's life, everything he gets by taking it away from somebody else. Everything that's his, that belongs to him, that's his by right, he has to get by taking it away from somebody else. That's his first position in life. Eventually, he's going to get another name. What's his other name? Israel, right? The word Israel, the first part of it is sar, which means a prince. To a prince, things come without his running to get it. To a prince, it belongs. This is what he graduates into. But the first section of his life, he's below, he's behind, he's following, and he gets what he gets. Now, there's a reason why he has to do that. Jacob has a kind of dual identity, and not only Jacob, but this identity that Jacob has, this dual identity, is implanted on the Jewish people throughout history. Sometimes we're on a level that's called Yaakov, and sometimes we're on a level called Yisrael. Both names remain with him. Both names are used for the Jewish people throughout history, and divides up the conditions that we are in different periods of history. So Jacob becomes the template for the entire future of the Jewish people, and he starts out life this way. The circumstances of his birth portray this in very dramatic fashion. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. The lads grew up, Esau became one who knows hunting, man of the field. Your translator put in his parshanut here, but in the Hebrew there's no but. Jacob was a wholesome man, abiding in tents. Here, there's a little bit of standard biblical scholarship. When you have parallel structure, you're meant to associate the features in the elements in the structure, and you're supposed to study them, how they're related to one another, to see whether the correspondence is obvious. If it isn't obvious, you have to work on it. Let's take a look. You have two passages here with a tripartite structure. Each one has three elements. First is the name Esau. Second is hunting, activity. And third is his locus, the man of the field. The second trio, Jacob is a name. Wholesome is something about the kind of person he is. And abiding in tents is his locus, is where he is, his environment. So in both cases, the first element is a name. In both cases, the last element is where he is. Then there's the middle element. That doesn't look so obviously parallel. In Esau's case, it's hunting, which is an activity, how he makes a living and how he provides for himself. And in Jacob's case, it's a moral quality, wholesome. Tamim. Tam. Now, I just said that the middle qualities aren't directly parallel because in the case of Esau, it's hunting. In the case of Jacob, it's a moral quality of being wholesome. I'm not really describing it correctly, am I? Look more carefully and do better than I did.
Knows hunting?
Yeah. What does it say about Esau? He knows hunting. Doesn't say he's a hunter. Doesn't say he went hunting. That would be a description of action. Knows hunting is a description of knowledge. Knowledge is internal. Is what you have, what you are, not what you do. So now already the gap isn't so big. In Jacob, still in Jacob, it's a moral quality. And Esau, it's not a moral quality, but it's an inner knowledge. Now let's work on Esau's case and see if we can't push it more in the direction of a moral quality. He knows hunting. What does it mean to know hunting? If you're going to hunt animals, that includes birds, what quality must you have in order to hunt?
Patience.
What?
Patience.
Patience.
Conniving and trap.
One second. Let's think about that. No one's suggested that to me before. You must have patience.
100%.
I wonder if there aren't ways of hunting that don't require. I don't know. That's an interesting thought. What else must you have? I won't disqualify what you're saying. What else must you have?
Cleverness.
What kind of cleverness? In particular, what kind of cleverness must you have?
The animals.
Say again?
Track the animals.
Okay, track the animals. But in tracking, part of the art of tracking is to make sure, that's closer, to make sure the animal doesn't know you're tracking him, right? Because if he knows you're tracking him, you lost it. He's going to make a run for the hills, right? So you've got to be able to deceive. Going to set a trap, better not be an obvious trap. Better look like regular terrain, right? If you're going to go hunting birds, hide in the bushes so the birds can't see you. Don't make sound, they'll hear you, right? Wear camouflage so they don't see you. You've got to be able to deceive. All successful hunting requires deception. So when it says that Esau knows hunting, that includes he has the ability to deceive. Now we're getting closer to a moral quality. And it's the parallel structure that pushes you that way. You have two names, two environments, and in the middle you have something which looks like unrelated. No, it's not unrelated. It's not unrelated. Think more carefully about it. You'll see that it is related. And this is what Chazal say. This is a classical comment. I'm not just giving you the textual background for the comment. The most natural way to take the pasuk is that the became goes on Esau. And that should lead you to ask, so what was he before? He became one who knows hunting. Before that, apparently, he wasn't. Jacob didn't become. He just was. And this, I think, is part of the background for a famous comment of Rosh Hashanah Hirsch. Now, he says, the edition that I saw, in the edition it says that it's a statement in the rabbinic literature. I have not been able to find it. But often enough, there are manuscripts which get lost, and some people have them, some people don't. It could be we don't have those manuscripts. He says that Rebekah and Isaac failed. I didn't change the order for any purpose. Isaac and Rebekah failed in the way they brought them up. They treated them the same. They treated them both as budding Torah scholars, and they trained them in the elevated elements of the way of Torah living. That was a terrible mistake. Esau needed a different treatment, a different training, a different inspiration, different education. He quotes the famous verse, Chanuch l'na'ar al pi darko, train the child according to his own way, his way. Not everyone gets the same way. And that was part of the failure. So they tried to train him in the way that Jacob was going. It didn't take. And he became involved in hunting because what they were giving him didn't take. So he criticizes them as making a mistake in the way in which they tried to bring them up. At any rate, that's that. Now the next verse is very short and very deep, very difficult. Isaac loved Esau, for game was in his mouth. And, again, your translator is expressing his reaction. And Rebekah loved Jacob. Let's go piece by piece. Isaac loved Esau, for game was in his mouth. In whose mouth?
In his own, no?
Say again?
In his own.
Who's the he?
Yitzchak.
Oh. He says the game was in Isaac's mouth.
Or I interpret it as Esau's.
You interpret it as Esau's mouth. So let's try to figure it out. Isaac loves his son. He loves his son because he has a fleishik diet. Wow, look at the amount of steak he eats. I love my son. He's just a big steak eater. You know, that's thrilling that he probably that's a stretch, right? Here, he's a hunter, right? He is a hunter and provides his father with fresh game. And because he serves his father in that way, his father loves him. Just one second. And then I think there's no question that this is correct. And as far as I know, it's not a single commentator who says the game is in Esau's mouth. Let's take it that the first part of the sentence says, Isaac loves Esau because Esau feeds his father fresh game. Okay, now let's move to the second part. Rebekah loved Jacob. Rebekah loved Jacob. Can you infer anything about her feelings for Esau from that statement? The first and second statements in the verse are not parallel at all. In the first, it gives a reason. And the second doesn't give a reason. That's very important. We're not in a position yet to fully understand it, but that's very important. Okay, put that on the side, but keep that in mind. Let's go back to my question. My question is, from the words, Rebekah loved Jacob, can you conclude anything about her feelings for Esau? Her feelings for Esau. Let me give you a parallel and see if I can make this clear. I'm telling you about two students in my class, Peter and Paul. Peter does all the homework, and his answers to questions are excellent, and he expresses himself well in class, and he has original ideas. And Paul always comes on time. Did I imply anything about Paul's status? I think so. If I had all that praise to say about Peter, and I didn't, and then all I could say about Paul is that he comes on time, that sounds like there's nothing else to say, you know. Having said everything they said about Peter. Here the text testifies she loves Jacob. Stop. If she loved both of them, or certainly she loved them equally, then it should have said she loved Jacob and Esau. Maybe even Esau and Jacob. After all, the subject here is both of them. They're both in the same sentence. It isn't as if we're reading Jacob's biography, and then we're talking about things that happened to Jacob. It happened to be that his mother loved him. Then now you wouldn't be able to conclude anything at all. But all the stories about both of them, the very sentence we're talking about has Esau in it. To say she loved Jacob and leave Esau out has got to mean at least she doesn't love Esau as much. Now let's go back to the first half. Now it's time for a trick question. The first half says, and you've already given the answer. The first half says that Isaac loves Esau. Only Esau. Jacob's left out. Shall we conclude that Isaac loves Esau and not Jacob? I'm telling you the second half, which says that Rebekah loves Jacob, excludes Esau. What about the first half? It says Isaac loves Esau. Should that exclude Jacob? So of course people here get nervous. Oh no, we can't say that. But you've got to say that. We've got to play fair. Either using one name excludes the other one, or it doesn't. If you're going to tell me in the second half it excludes Esau, then the first half excludes Jacob. You can't deny that. The verse has to be treated in parallel fashion. And your preferences for Jacob and everything else, we're doing pshat. And pshat, put them on the shelf. You have to follow the book and see where the book leads. Okay? But now he's already given the answer to that. What's the answer to the question that I'm asking? Is Jacob excluded from the first half or not? Gotta be. He's gotta be, because it says only Esau, not Jacob. Is excluding him from the first half somehow demerit? Is it somehow critique? Does it make him less? No, because the first half talks about love for a certain purpose. Love for a certain reason. This is love because he gets fresh game. I call it lunch love. Right? Love for lunch. The only one Isaac loves for lunch is Esau. That's true. Isaac does not love Jacob for lunch. He definitely doesn't. The first part of the sentence isn't describing a fatherly love for a son. It's talking about Isaac's love for Esau because he feeds him fresh game. That's exclusive. That relationship Isaac has only to Esau and not to Jacob. But so what? That's not a loss on Jacob's part. He's not a hunter. He doesn't feed him game in the first place. It's not relevant to him. Whereas the second half, where it says Rebekah loves Jacob, and as he pointed out, there's no purpose point. That's motherly love. It's the love of a parent for a child. And it's said for Jacob but not for Esau. That hits. That means somehow she regarded Esau as inferior and not worthy of the same kind of love. This verse is extremely, extremely deep, and it's going to be very important setting up what's going to happen in the next chapter. Not right away, but the next chapter. You know that there's a rabbinic comment which is close to what you're saying. Because the bays of bifiv, which is translated here as in his mouth, that particle, that letter bays, can be used for someone who's using something as a tool. And they read it as Esau hunted his father with his mouth. He used his mouth to hunt his father. And what they say is he used to ask his father super frum questions. Gee, Dad, I know we're supposed to take a tenth of our food and give it to people who represent God. Must I take a tenth of salt also? Is salt a food, Dad? I know I sprinkle it on my steak, so maybe it's also food. Clever questions like that, as a way of pretending to be very pious, And from that, you already learn what preferences Isaac demonstrated in the house. Why would Esau try to get his favor with that kind of question? Because he knows his father likes that kind of question. He knows what his father's oriented to. He knows what his father cares about. Father cares about serving God, so Esau pretends also to be serving God to get his father's favor. I mean, you can learn a lot from things like that. But that's, I would say, a secondary meaning here. Having known that he was a hunter, so it means he was hunting and he provided it. It comes out now as an orientation for the later. You have to remember that Isaac has a certain connection to Esau. We don't know anything about Isaac's feeling for Jacob, positive or negative. It's not mentioned here. He has a certain connection has to do with hunting. I hinted to you already, it's because he's serving his father. For us, honoring and serving your father is one of the biblical commandments. It's one of the commandments in the 10 Commandments. So it's not a small thing. And that's going to be a big element in how he relates to it. Yeah.
I remember something very little about. You could read it as, Isaac loved Esau because he hunted him, like what you said.
Right.
So because he was tricking him.
Yeah, that's
why.
right. And then that would mean that he was. Now there, I think this is this medrash that I just mentioned to you. Here again, one mustn't be simplistic about it. Does it mean that Isaac was fooled? Maybe not. Maybe not. It just means that he looked at his son and he says, my son is trying to make an impression on me. He wants me to treat him well. He wants me to favor him, right? How's he doing it? Well, he's pretending to be pious. Well, at least he knows what I stand for. He's not winning race car races and bringing the trophies home and saying, Dad, love me. No, he's asking about taking Meiser from salt. So already there's a recognition there. So he could, it could even work without his being deceived. It's not obvious that he was deceived. We have to be very, very careful. I have to learn this all the time, over and over and over again. Rabbi Meiserman often points out to me that I just made free associations or free assumptions or free conclusions. And with a little more critical thinking, you could see that the conclusions, where you go one step beyond what's written, you have to be triply suspicious of yourself that you invented it.